we have these core values around being a successful retailer. And one of the things that I talk about in the world a lot is, the fundamental of this business. And here we are going on 30 years later. But the fundamental of this business is we were really good retailers. And we understood how to open a store and build a store and make a store successful. And at one point in the proceedings, not sure what year, maybe you'll remember, there was this initiative to write the values around being a good retailer, and that's something called STEAMED. And that was it was prolific in our world for a long time. And I still think there's a ton of value in it. And so, I was hoping that we could document that and talk through each one of the core values and why it's important and why we're so focused on these as it's seven, right? I believe there's seven core values, operational
Seven.
values.
Yeah, but because I want to make sure that we start off with the operating mission statement as well, because
Sure.
those go hand in hand to me.
Yeah. So operational values, STEAMED, and then the mission statement, which I've always loved. It's just so simple, right? And so yeah, why don't we go into the mission statement, and then we can talk a bit about why that was so critical.
Yeah. So, by the way, the timeline was perk and position. Well, technically, position priorities were kind of from day one. That was a Mary Roselle thing,
Yeah.
right? So that's like 95, 96. That was hardcore right from the get-go. Perk was developed in 1998, essentially for the 1999 opening of store 2.
Right.
And so that was sort of meant to be that magic that an owner operator brought to the management of their store, right? Than just say a traditional manager. The operating core values and the mission statement were developed at the precipice of franchising, which happened in 99. So
Yeah.
earlier I said 99, I meant 1997 when we were opening the second location. So
Right.
yeah, but the mission statement, which I mean, the stuff that we wrote down is so damn simple that it doesn't seem like it could be true. And I think the mission statement is one of those. And it goes something like this, and that is to create one new BIGGBY coffee fanatic per day, per store, who will actively promote us to others. That's the mission statement, right? And that one is just ridiculously simple. And often people have looked at Steamed and said, hey, the one thing that's missing from Steamed is something about focus. And to me, we don't need to add anything about focus because the focus is all embedded in the mission statement, right? And particularly at startup, particularly when communicating to staff at any stage of operations, when you're dealing with the public, all that you should be focused on is an experience of a new potential BIGGBY customer or an existing BIGGBY customer to want them to come back tomorrow
Right.
or next week, depending, whatever their cadence is.
Yeah.
But the magic of the statement, the simplicity of it, is that has to be so dynamic. That has to be so dynamic that you also are encouraging them in this experience that they had, that they would like to tell other people about it. And I'm sorry, that statement applies to any retail application that you could imagine, whether it's online or physical retail or in the coffee shop business or in the grocery business. It's all the same thing, that if you want to know what you're supposed to do, if there's some uncertainty about what you're supposed to do when you wake up and before you go to bed, the time that you operate your business, it's that you're trying to create a new BIGGBY coffee fanatic who will tell other people about us.
Yeah.
And it's that simple.
Yeah. And when working with new franchise owners, engaging them in developing their business, building their business. That that mission statement was powerful because if you get 1 year from today and you've added 365 new customers,
You're golden.
right, you're golden, right?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty, that's the simplicity, the whole piece around the dynamic experience. We all know what that takes
Mm.
to have somebody leave your store and be as fired up enough to be at the water cooler at their workplace and have them say, "Hey, have you tried that new BIGGBY coffee at the corner of X and Y?" Like these guys were great. Like you can't believe how they were amazing this morning, and you should try it. Like that's all we're looking for, that one moment. But it does have to be the kind of experience that's memorable, that's interesting, that's powerful, that we do something with them and for them in the moment in the store where they walk out with that feeling. And that is if you're doing that, you're winning the retail game. Yeah.
Totally.
So
Uh,
yeah, the again, the simplicity of it has always been the genius of it. And so how do you do that? Well, you do that through experience, but also you have to be promoting because you have to get new people to walk in so you can provide that experience so that they can go promote you to somebody.
that's right. I mean, frankly, as an owner operator, particularly in the startup phase, I mean, you got to be right there, right? I mean, you got to be right there. You got to be connected to your consumer,
Yeah.
period. If that's what you're trying to impact.
Yeah. 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 I've always loved that the retail, the mission statement, it's great. The retail values or the operational values, steamed, they are meant to drive that, that if you follow these seven values, you should be meeting the mission statement, right? Like and so, I think that some conversation around each one I think would be great, right?
For sure.
And so, um, you know, S, systems driven company.
Yeah.
And yeah, spend a little time on that one. Like why, it's the first one. I mean, so by default, in some ways, maybe it's the most
Mhm.
important one, but
Mhm.
we can argue that all day long, which one's most important or which one's our favorite.
Mhm.
But why are systems so important? Why did we call that out in the very first uh, value?
Yeah. I mean, simplicity through systems, I think a lot of people think we call it out because we're a franchise, right? So of course we have systems, right? We're supposed to have systems for all kinds of things. But what people need to realize is that we created this core value before we were a franchise, right?
Right.
So we didn't really understand that it would be really necessary if you were going to do it as a franchise, right? But here to me, here's the gift that systems gives you. Uh, the gift that systems give you is the ability to grow, right? And people are like, well, how does a system create the opportunity to grow? Well, if if you are trying to reinvent everything in your business constantly, you can't possibly be focused on let's say even that mission statement, right? Of creating one new BIGGBY coffee fanatic per day, per store per day who actually promotes to others.
Okay,
Uh,
so we have these operational values that we believe that if you focus in on and work on these 7 points, that I don't want to say by default, but that you should be able to meet the mission statement, which is create one new BIGGBY coffee fanatic per day per store who will actively promote us to others. So, we start that steamed, we start that with S, that we're a systems driven company. And, by default, it's number one. You know, we could have figured out how to put systems somewhere else,
Mhm.
in there, but systems are really truly important to us. And give me your 2 cents on why we put systems first, why systems are so important to our company.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's actually in the words itself. So the way that line reads after S is simplicity through systems.
Right.
And we're going back to this idea of just having things be simple, right? So it's a thing that allows you to show up to the job of running your business and having a set of, sorry, you're not supposed to use the definition in the definition, but using a set of symptoms to get you through your day, and to do it in a manner that is consistent and reliable and something that your staff and employees can anticipate and so on. But the real gift of it is it allows you to be creative, right? So if you're spending your time being creative on systems and trying to change systems or modify systems and so on, instead of just operating them, you are not being creative in your potential for growth. And by that, I mean potential for consumer engagement, right? So whether that's through you personally or through your staff, the things that you should be worrying about are not how to make a cup of coffee. It should not be how to express a drink. It should not be how to greet a customer. It shouldn't be about how to say goodbye to a customer. All those things should be figured out on your behalf. You just operate those rote. And then your brain, which is, it has a finite capacity, is free to think about how do I get that guy to come back in tomorrow, right? How do I get that guy to have such an experience that they will want to tell somebody else? So simplicity through systems creates an opportunity for growth.
Yeah, yeah. And a couple things I would add to that. Uh, one, as a franchise and a collective body of people, if we're all using the same system and we make an improvement in that system, then everybody gets it. Whereas if everyone is operating differently and doing different things within the store minute to minute, then one person makes an improvement and the rest of us don't get the benefit of that. And so it's about the collective wisdom of systems. The other thing is that as a franchise owner, if you want to have multiple units, yeah, sure. Maybe if you're standing in your store, operating your store day in and day out with an apron on, maybe you don't need those systems as much, right? But you step out of your store and there's a huge vacuum when you leave because you haven't implemented the systems. Then what? And so the only way really to build a successful multi-unit business is to lean on those systems and make them the most important thing that's occurring within the store for your people
Right.
to grow and to build the business. Um, you had always talked about, and I always loved it, which was the system at your house about taking out the garbage, right?
Sure.
And I was
Yeah.
hoping you were going to touch on that because I think it really does sort of bring that story kind of brings it home.
Yeah, well, it's been so long since my son's been at home, I almost forgot it. But our trash went out on Sunday night, and I have an obsessive personality, so by Saturday morning, I'm already thinking about the trash has got to go out on Sunday night, and I would, uh, 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 it would just consume a lot of mental energy for me
Trying to
to
remember.
trying to remember, right? And but then, I decided to create the system, and the system was my son. So, I assigned and delivered that system to him that he takes out the trash. And what that did is it freed my mind, like I mentioned earlier, to grow and think about other things that were more important than taking out
To
the damn
growth. Yeah, more
trash.
important to growth than taking
Right? I
out the.
mean, there are things that are worth thinking about, and then there are things that aren't. And the things that are worth thinking about, I think, are in business anyway, is driving your top line. Or
Yeah,
if it's in your personal life, it's about having your own personal growth, right? And having the time to do that. I would mention too that without systems, there isn't a brand, right? And so
right.
it befuddles me occasionally, right? That somebody will join a brand and it has assigned systems, and then they might want to rejigger those. And it is the cumulative execution of these systems over X amount of units that actually creates a brand. So when you muck about with the systems in an unauthorized way, you're actually eroding the brand.
Yeah, yeah, and so if I think if you go to, let's say, the highest performing 10% of the highest performing stores in our system, and you ask the franchise owners, I think most would say to a new franchisee, just follow the system, right?
Yeah.
It works. So we tell you that before you become a franchise owner. And we're kind of adamant about that. And then if you've signed up for a franchise system and then you ignore the most powerful thing that the successful franchise owners tell you is important to building your business, and you ignore that, that's irrational. It's just an irrational. So that's S. So then T, both near and dear to our hearts, right? Is that we're a top line driven company. And that has always sniffed at first glance as, well, of course you are, right?
Mhm.
You're a franchisor, it's top line. It's like, so the at first glance or first sniff, there's a little bit of maybe, could be some cynicism around that. But when we wrote that, we weren't a franchisor, right? And so what was that about? The top line driven mentality.
Yeah. Yeah, it does sound like dark capitalist to because ultimately when you're saying you're top line driven, what you're saying is I want to earn one more dollar tomorrow than I did today.
Yeah.
You know, and really I've gotten up all my life doing just that. So how do we collectively earn one more dollar tomorrow than we did today?
Yeah.
But I think to really understand what it means is I mean what we're talking about here is revenue. What we're talking about is cash in the drawer. Although I think there's very little cash in the drawers anymore. It's all Visa, MasterCard. But you get the idea. It's revenue. But the thing to understand about revenue is not a prime number, right? There are numbers that make up revenue, and generally those numbers are your average check, average beverage check, average transaction, whatever it is that you're averaging times the number of customers you have. And in retail, it doesn't really matter what kind of business you're talking about, whether you're selling cars or whether you're selling tea or you're selling coffee. Your revenue is built of those two numbers. And so if you want to turn up the dial on your revenue, you have to turn up one of those two numbers or both. And it's worth understanding that the number of transactions, I think, is the hardest one. The average transaction price is the easiest one. And the reason I think the average transaction price is the easiest one is because it's totally within your control. It is definitely at the cash register that you're able to influence that the best, right? I think we've seen that across QSR. If you're at McDonald's, they might try to upsize you into some kind of meal or the bigger meal, or if you're at Wendy's, there's the single, or then you get one with 2 patties or 3 patties or 4 patties. It's just an add-on of some kind. It could be a mug, a bag of coffee. It could be a food item. You've got the idea. That's in your hands right at the cash register, right at the time of purchase. And so selling up, I think it's something that everybody understands. Pretty straightforward. The number of transactions you have, I think, is the harder one to understand. And when I used to talk about this in front of groups, I would say, what's the number one way of getting more customers? And the number one answer to that question was marketing. And that's exactly the wrong answer, right? And it's not that marketing is not useful, but you shouldn't market until you've done this other thing. And it kind of goes back to that mission statement. But you have to create an experience to the consumer that is dynamic enough for them to want to come back more often, tell somebody else, or bring somebody else back with them, right? So if you want more transactions, your service level, your level of engagement, your level of product competency has to be 100%, right? And and maybe more. That's sort of a ridiculous statement to say there should be more than 100%, but you should be trying to create an experience that is dynamic enough for one of those three things to happen. And so, when you get down to it, this idea of improving revenue comes down to paying attention to your customer. That's all top line driven means, is that you are so paying attention to your customer that you're going to have to beat them back because you're creating an experience that is dynamic enough that they beyond reason want to come back more often, and beyond reason would want to tell somebody at the water cooler, and beyond reason would want to invite their best friend to come back with them and experience the same thing. And that's
Yeah.
what top line driven is being about. It's being a service oriented company, period.
Yeah. Whenever we would see significant growth at the store level or even at the franchise level, frankly, it was always a compliment that we were doing the right things.
Yeah.
And so, to be top line driven is being focused on generating more revenue, which is customers coming more often or spending more money when they're there. And like that's the greatest compliment. That they love you enough, they enjoy coming in enough, they like the products to try new and different things and so on. It's the greatest compliment. And it's how I've always looked at revenue is, when we were selling, $300,000 a year worth of coffee, that was we that was our threshold. Well, when we were selling $100 million worth of coffee, that's a huge compliment that that many people want the product. And now we're selling $300 million a year worth of coffee. That's even a huger compliment, right?
Yeah.
And that's the focus of growth is the customer is voting for you, voting for your brand and your product with their dollars. And
One
I
dollar
love
bills.
that. one
Yeah.
dollar bills. And by the way, Bob, it's probably not Visa, MasterCard anymore. It's probably Apple Pay. You click on this.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a little behind in some areas. There's no doubt about that. But
Uh, all right.
yeah,
So then the E in steamed, is always been sort of, my personal favorite, I guess.
I'm gonna let you
And
do it then.
oh, no, 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 no,
No,
no.
no, the E is yours, man.
Energy, excitement, and enthusiasm. That to me, that is the attitude that is so critical in relation to success. And the reason is that you are the energy source of your business. And if you aren't doing it, if you're grumpy and you're surly and negative, do you really think your people are going to be engaging the customer in a positive, energetic way that we all know is what you have to do? And so I've never understood that, right? And so when you are present in your business, you have to be the most fired up person there. And that demonstrates to everybody how much and how enthusiastic you are for the business. And you know, I know it's hard. There are bad days, but guess bad days don't matter. You don't get the luxury of having a bad day as a retailer. You've got to be out there. You have to be on stage. You have to be presenting yourself in such a way that you're representing the business. So people are going to believe in you and they're going to be fired up for you and your employees are going to be fired up. So, that I know I mentioned to you that I had a conversation with a guy who, he said to me, boy, you guys really seem to make this growth thing look easy. And I didn't have a response. It was like in an interview and I didn't have a response. And I was like, and I didn't. And so then I called him back a few days later and I said to him, I think I got it. Right. And I said, I think the way, it maybe if we do make this growth thing look easy, it's attitude. It's 100% attitude. And it's, firing up, showing up fired up every single day, enthusiastic, engaged, ready to make it happen. And if you aren't prepared to do that and you show up surly and grumpy, that's going to have a really, really dramatic impact on the business.
Totally.
And so, there are no bad days, and that's how you have to present yourself. So I don't know if you have any input on that one, but that to me is it's the one that I'm always amazed that people don't just inherently have that,
Yeah.
that they're opening a business.
Well, I remember in the early days, I mean, you would come in and, get the shop all set up and everything like that. And it'd be like 5 minutes to open because we always turn the lights on 5 minutes before the open sign and that kind of thing. But there was a ritual where you poured yourself 2 shots of espresso before. And the point of that to me is um, it's not that you just need to be the most fired up person. Like people need to think you're a little on the crazy side, right? And by that I mean it's like, wow, I mean, it, you know, like you said, if you're here, your people will line up right behind that, right? If you're here, they'll line up right behind that, right? But if you take it way up to here, I mean, they may not hit where you are, but where they come in might be 100%, might
Right.
be 100%. And so, you know, this is going to sound strange, but I just think it's super valuable for people to be talking about how maniacal, in a good way, you are about the business. And it just sets this tone with staff and consumers that I mean, like you're all effing in. You're not messing around. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I do
Yeah.
want to say too that running a small business, whether it's a big B or any kind of business, I mean, there are days, bills come in and, it's like,
You
oh,
don't
I
have
don't
any
have enough
money.
money and, or people are calling in sick and, there's just all this stuff, your delivery shows up late, your air conditioner goes out. I mean, we just go right on down the list. It's like you're getting gut punched and just as you're getting up from that, somebody gives you an upper hook on your chin. But I got to tell you this, that being out on the floor, uh, engaging the consumer, engaging the staff in the manner that we were just talking about, there is no better therapy for your brain than to do that. Okay. And if you were to get lost somewhere in your business, I guarantee you that it's not in the office, it's not staring at the wall, it's not it's getting right in there with your staff and with your consumer. There's nothing that is more valuable than that. And you know, I think we experienced that. Maybe you would talk about it a little bit. I mean, but we bought some stores in Toledo and converted them to BIGGBY Coffees, and I mean, we were freaking underwater.
Yeah. We were
And
villains too, by the way.
and we were villains, of course, to the consumers of the old concept that we bought. But but what we did as a group, you, me, Mary, Tony, and there were others, is we went down there and we worked those stores like hell.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we gave it all we got, just in the fashion that we're talking about right here. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. That's, to me, there's just something to engaging the consumer, engaging the staff that feeds you as well,
so,
right? And so, that's E in STEAM to, I think it's just critical. Always have faith, confidence, and courage.
mm,
To me, this is going to be harder than you expect it to be. And that's
mm.
the point of this value. And I've never talked to a franchise owner that got 18 months in and said, "Whoo, that was easier than I expected." Never. It's never happened,
Yeah.
and so, it's going to test you. It's going to test you in so many ways. And, can you continue to have the faith? And I'll say this, and then I want to hear you riff on this too, but in our however many years it's been, our many years working together, I don't think there's been a day we doubted that we would be where we are today and that we're going to keep growing.
That's right.
And that's the kind of commitment it takes before you get in. And to come in and the question that always boggled my mind was people asking how much money they were going to make in year one. I was like, oh man, this the the commitment here is very different than, hey, how much cash am I going to make in year one? And so, you know, A is just I love your explanation of this too, and if you don't mind.
Sure. Always have faith, confidence, and courage. That happens to be my favorite one. I think you know, both the one that's your favorite and my favorite really speak to the idea of entrepreneurialism um, and not describing entrepreneurialism in that Webster's dictionary version, which is the ability to monetize a product or whatever, but sort of the psychosis of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when you enter into something that is unknown, there's fear created almost immediately. And what I want to tell everybody is, if on your first day of operations you don't want to throw up on your shoes a little bit, then you're probably not actually right in your head. You know what I mean? So, this is really hard stuff to do, and it's a little bit. And I've never given birth, so I can't really say this, but in terms of when I talk to mothers, that have given birth, there will be people who try to describe that in advance, what it's like. And you still don't understand it until it happens. And I think giving birth to a business is the same thing. And so you really got to show up with faith. And the reason you have to show up with faith is that the the hallway of this small business is it's dark uh, and it's full of an uncertainty. It's full of uncertainty. And it doesn't really matter whether you're a spiritual person or a religious person or whatever. I guarantee you that you have to show up with a degree of faith, and faith is the idea of belief, and you need to believe in you, right? Like just at that moment in time, you have to believe in you. That's essential. Now, confidence to me is something altogether different. I mean, they're related. All these terms are related. But typically people refer to confidence like, how firm your handshake is and how square your shoulders are when you enter a room, and does your voice waver when you're talking in public, and those kinds of things. Are you displaying confidence? And I think the thing about all those things I just mentioned is that that's just people faking stuff, and that the real fundamental about confidence is self-reliance. And my definition of self-reliance is that you never hold other people responsible for the decisions that you made, that you never do that. And we all make decisions, whether it's to get in the franchise business, get into small business, whatever kind of business it is, but you can never hold other people responsible for the decisions that you make in a given minute, hour, day, week, month. They're yours, and you've got to own them,
Yeah, I love that.
in the best of ways. Now, courage is doing something you're afraid of anyway, right? So, traditionally, we say a soldier is brave and has courage. Why? Because they go in harm's way, even though they might get shot and killed, and they're doing something that they're afraid of anyway, because they believe in something, right? They have faith in what they're up to. Um, Owning a business, it definitely takes courage every day. It takes courage. You have to have the ability to do something you're afraid of anyway. And I don't mean just owning a small business, but when it all rests with you, because in the end, when you own a small business, somehow the buck stops there. That's the part about confidence, self-reliance that is really important to understand. But when that buck stops with you, that is a lot of responsibility. And listen, I admire anybody that dares to open their own business. But I know in order for them to be successful, that they need all three: faith, confidence, and courage.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. I love that one too. Moving on to M, which is maintain long-term sustainability through profitability. And, I think that for us anyway, uh, I have to say we were always pretty good at this one, right? And we've got a lot of positive feedback for people to look at our business and so on that we grew and we grew fairly aggressively, but we've always been profitable. And the concept for me here, in so many ways, is that the fundamental is that you have to be profitable. You have to be returning on the investment you've made, both financially, from a time perspective, from a blood, sweat, and tears perspective. You have to be returning on that. And we've always talked about how the equity position needs to be returned on first, right? And that is, there are moments in the business when maybe you don't return as aggressively as others because you're making investments in the business, right? And you're choosing to do that. But it's a conscious decision that, and I don't think people see it that way, that you have to make that choice and you have to do what it takes to be profitable. And that doesn't necessarily mean just cut expenses, right? Like if you've got a break even point and that break even point is X number of cups per day, well, you know what? Your life, 80% of your attention needs to go at getting to that break even point, period. Nothing else matters, right? And to me, that conscious choice of focusing on what you have to focus on right now in order to get to profitability, right? And so it is something that I think people, and you've always talked about, sometimes profit is like this thing as a business owner that you wait to happen to you.
Something that's left over.
Yeah. And we've always approached it from the perspective of, okay, well, here's our projected revenue, and that our profitability is a very key. I mean, there's others, labor, paying your people, and obviously you have to cover food costs and so on. But that profitability line is a very important line in the business. And again, I think, sometimes when we talk about this, I think people are rolling their eyes and like, of course, like, of course that's important. But it's shocking how many people are almost passive in relation to that, and
So,
they're waiting for it to happen.
yeah, I mean, profitability is not something that happens to you.
Right.
It's something you choose,
You
right?
do. Yeah.
And that's it. Now, um, there's a link between top line driven and maintain long-term sustainability through profitability. Like you say, you've got to get to that break even point, and I wouldn't even worry about profitability until you get to that break even point.
Right.
But listen, I've never known anybody to save their way to prosperity.
Ever.
And when you enter into business, my assumption is that this is something that you want to grow. Today, tomorrow, next year, maybe it's with more units or whatever. And the only way you're going to be sustainable is to be profitable, and that takes active management. Now, I don't mean, although some of these things don't hurt, I don't mean going back and looking at your linen bill and trying to figure out how to get 5%, better on
Yeah.
it.
Right.
To me, that's always been a little bit of a waste of time. Now, I'm not saying that your costs aren't important, and there are certain metrics for labor, and there's certain metrics for cost of goods sold and general management and so on and so forth. But this idea that that you've landed, which is we've always known about what our revenue is going to be, and we've always taken a number, a percent of that, and identified that as profit. And frankly, we've made profit and expense. And so it's not something that's left over. It's something that gets paid first after cost of goods sold
Yeah.
and labor.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we figure out how to operate within that particular budget. But that is an aggressive look at how you actively manage a business.
Well, and this is a little bit nuanced, but when you become profitable and to increase your profit, even once you're profitable, the focus on saving costs is finite. It's a one-time thing. You might save 5%. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, man, doing that. But people seem to obsess with that in relation to profitability. Whereas the nuance here is cost cutting is finite, revenue generation and increasing your top line is compounding, right? And you grow it and you compound it year over year. And that to me is the most effective way to get to profitability. And if you're at 200 cups, you can try to save pennies, right? And you can probably be effective at that. And there's a story, I won't mention his name. I think you'll remember who it was, who we were selling yogurt parfaits. And we used to have strawberries and put strawberries in the bottom of the yogurt parfait. And I remember going to meet with him, and he was very new in the business, maybe 6 to 9 months in the business. And he was obsessed over that. The cost of the strawberries was skyrocketing, you know? And I was like, okay, well, we got to talk about that, deal with it, whatever. But then I did some math and I said to him, I said, listen, he wanted to change to blueberries. That's what it was. He wanted to change to blueberries because blueberries were less expensive. So I did the math. He was going to be saving like 14 cents per yogurt parfait by switching from blueberries to strawberries, because we're having the straw anyway. And I remember doing the math. I'm like, you're going to save 14 cents. How many are you selling? It was like 4 a day he was selling.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're so upset about the cost of strawberries, and you can't believe how dumb we're being by putting strawberries in the yogurt parfait, and you're saving 56 cents per day. Like again, right?
Yeah.
That's that mentality of cost saving. And I'm like,
Yeah.
but if you were to go out and generate one new regular customer per day, right? One year
Boom.
from now, you would have, and I did the math. If we have, 3.2 visits per week per regular customer, like you do the math on that, it's like you're talking thousands and thousands of dollars at the end of the year. And so that's the approach to profitability, right? And
Yeah.
the focus on profitability is steers you differently once you choose to be profitable. What do you need to do to be profitable? And so, okay. So, uh, this one again, near and dear to our hearts, engaging the community, giving is getting.
Yeah.
I've always loved your talk on that. So, what does that mean to you? Why is it so important? And tell us why that ended up being inside of Steamed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fundamental to the DNA of BIGGBY Coffee, and if it's not, in any individual store, I guess so be it. But you know, there's a couple things I believe about this. The first is your location, your store. It's in a community, and if you got people coming in from that community supporting you, I believe it's your obligation to support them, period, right? Or if you consider that to be an equation, you can reverse the equation, which is what we do, and we say that if we support the community will support us. And to me, it's just one of those really simple ideas, and it may feel really irrational to go show up at a 5K and give away coffee, or at some expo that the local community has, or some library or some school or whatever. But I also believe in that that basic phrase from this is in the Catholic religion. I'm not even religious, but it goes, it is in the giving that we receive, right? And so to me, this isn't a marketing ploy. This is a way of being as a person. This is a way of being in your business, and that is, if you display generosity, first of all, it is extraordinarily rewarding as an individual to give to others. I believe that fundamentally, but I also believe, and this isn't meant to be cynical, that it's hugely beneficial to the business, right? I mean, we talk about these ideas of creating dynamic experiences. Though those don't only have to happen at the point of transaction, they can happen out in the community. I mean, you and I used to walk around free beverage cards, and we used to
Give
break
away like I mean like it was crazy, you know?
like candy. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I'd give them to bank tellers when we dropped the deposit, or at the grocery store, or I'd leave a generous tip at a restaurant and a couple of free beverage cards. And
Every
I
time.
I guarantee you that whenever we did that, we got it back 20-fold,
Yeah,
20-fold, right?
yeah, yeah,
Because people really appreciate generosity. They just really do.
yeah,
And there's nothing about it that is bad, right?
yeah.
So I also just believe, and I know I'm going on too long, Mike, but that a coffee shop in particular is just a really safe place to be, in comparison to like a bar or, bowling alley or, whatever. I don't really know, but it's just a safe place, regardless of what age you are, what gender you are, and so on and so forth. This is a really safe place to be. And so to me, a coffee shop, a cafe is really a center of community. It's where people come together to meet. And so the idea of having a responsibility to be the center of your community, and that is providing space to people to be and commune, I think is really important as well. Boom,
Yeah.
that's it.
And I remember, like when someone would ask us for a donation for coffee,
Mhm.
what I experience in the world is uh in other businesses and so on is sort of this mentality of, yeah, okay, I'll support you with some coffee and I'll have it ready for you at 5:30 p.m. on Thursday for your event on Thursday night. And that's nice. But what we used to do, and I remember these days that we'd be like, we'd love to. And you know what? We'll come to your event, we'll set it up, we'll be there throughout the event. We'll keep it clean, we'll keep it tidy. So you're at the event, you set up a nice display, you've got it, throughout the event, you're wiping it down, you're serving people coffee. And then also, hey, can I be helpful in any other way tonight? Well, like you maybe it's a musical performance or something, and you get to the end of the event and you help put the chairs away, right? And you thank the person who was running it for the opportunity. Thanks for letting me come. I really appreciate you letting me do this. And so it's not just, yeah, here's your coffee, and there's sort of some like I like almost indebtedness. It's like, no, no, I want to be there. I want to do it. I've got a great story. So we were in Old Town Lansing, and you'll remember her name. Oh gosh. Anyway, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. She came up to me, and I remember talking about my girlfriend,
Mm.
and she was like, "Your girlfriend? I thought for sure you were gay." I'm like, no, I mean, I take that as a compliment.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but no, I'm not gay. I have a girlfriend and so on. And she's like, you're at every single gay function in the city, giving to a dude. I'm like, well, we're not just at every gay function in the city. We're at every function in
Yeah.
the whole city, and it's again, it's that the gift of generosity, right? And
Totally.
just critical. The
What,
last one, go ahead.
wait,
Sorry.
one last thing to add too, particularly if you do this as an owner. People like to meet the owner.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and so, the one big advantage about engaging with an event that is outside your store is it's outside your store, right?
Yeah.
They're
You,
not
you,
your customers already, right? And so you have the ability to stand behind a Cambro of coffee and hand out cups of coffee and let people know, that you're the owner, or here's a
and where
free
you
beverage
are and why
card.
you did it and to tell your
Yeah.
story and yeah, yeah, right. People want
And
to hear.
so you might be competing against a chain down the road, but they know the owner,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
and what happens when they're like, God, those guys are pretty cool. I think I'm going to go, which nobody said about me, but but I think I'm going to start going there, or I'm going to go check it out, or whatever it is.
yeah,
So
yeah. Well, and I
yeah,
guarantee you. This goes all the way back to systems, right? You can leave your store because you're depending on the systems. I guarantee you, whether it's a chain or a local independent, the local independent doesn't have the system set up. They can't leave the store. They can't go do this, and the chain's probably not doing it either, and so yeah, it's building the business in the way that you do have the ability to get out. And that's what you're talking about, the creativity
Yeah,
around what could I do this weekend to promote the business? And
yeah,
maybe you thumb through the newspaper, dating myself,
yeah.
but and find the event that's happening that you could call them up and see if you can engage.
That's right.
A little sponsorship money, and you show up with and give away coffee. So
Yeah.
yeah, that one, yeah, we were long-winded on that one, but that is one of those nuanced topics that is just, when people ask, hey, how'd you build a business? Well, this is how we did it, right? And
Well, and how do we do it with no advertising dollars?
yeah,
Because
right.
we didn't have that much money to spend on what is truly advertising, paid.
Right. We didn't
That
have bill. We weren't the biggest buyer of billboards in the state of Michigan, which we were for a long time,
that's right.
Yeah. And you're right about that. It's how do you build a business without a huge marketing budget?
Yeah, yeah,
The last one is determination, dedication, determination, and dependability, right? The three Ds. Uh, you know, for me, I've always said it. If you aren't going to be the most dedicated and dependable person in your business, don't get started. And I love your explanation on this too. So
yeah.
please.
Well, and with the three Ds, actually, there's like four Ds, and we use them interchangeably because one of the Ds is desire, and I
Desire.
always
Yeah.
I always say that desire is the easiest one, right? It's the one where I wish I won. I wish I had $1 million. I want to own my own business. Okay, good for you, you know. But it's going to take dedication. What do we mean by dedication? Single-minded, adherent commitment. Now that sounds like some kind of Harvard explanation, but what does it really mean? You got to give it everything you got. You got to give it everything you got. This isn't just like profitability. This is active, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you gotta lean in, you
Yeah.
know, and dependability to me is about responsibility, right? And the thing to understand about owning a small business, it is the most responsible thing that you will ever do. Okay, now that sounds sort of crazy, but in your regular life, in your civilian life, you might have, responsibility certainly to your faith, to your family, to your community in some way. But when you own a business, now you're just going to amp up that level of responsibility, right? So you still have it, to your faith, you still have it to your family, but your community involvement, especially what we just discussed, goes way up, right? Your presence in the community is off the charts. And then the other responsibility additions you have are your employees. I mean, you have the opportunity to take people for a moment in their life and shape them and help them grow. That's an enormous amount of responsibility. You're going to have responsibility to vendors, right? It goes off the charts. And if your shoulders aren't strong enough, you might crumble under that responsibility. So I always like to end on that particular note,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you shouldn't even consider this if
Right.
if if you're not willing to face that level of responsibility.
Yeah. And the nuance that I like to talk about here is, when you have a job, you have a boss, and you have accountability to that boss or to the team or whatever it might be. When you own a business, nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares if you show up to meeting ill prepared. No one's going to call you out if you're five
Yeah.
minutes late, right?
No.
And so this idea of dedication and dependability and so on, like you have to show up and you have to be committed to being prepared and being on time and following the system yourself first. And if you don't have the discipline and the dedication to do that, it can go sideways quick, right? And so, that's the other side of it too, is like nobody cares. Nobody gives a rip if you aren't, doing a good job, or if you're not working hard. No one's going to point it out. No one's going to coach you. You're there, you're alone. You got to do it, right? And you got to show up, and you got to commit yourself. And to me, that's again, it's one of those critical through lines on being in business for yourself. So, well, this has been great, Bob. I love getting into this stuff. Here we are, and it's been a long time since we've talked about these kinds of things, and I'm just so happy that we're doing it and having these conversations, because some of this stuff, that whole engaging the community, that whole piece, is just such a critical part of what we depended on
Yeah.
to build the business, and I certainly hope that others will be inspired by the amount of importance we're putting on something like that.
Again, I'll reiterate that I think that these concepts are super simple,
Yeah,
and that's what makes them great. And it's been decades, and we've never been able to improve one or add another one, right?
isn't that amazing?
And this will work for you if you're a Big B owner operator. This will work for you, whatever retail operation you ever run. These principles are solid.
Yeah, great. Thank you.